Thanks for watching this very emotional stories of Fae in this channel. Do subscribe and share to help growing the channel to enable us bring more to you. They say the Fae cannot love without consuming, and they cannot bleed without seeking revenge. But they lie. I am going to tell you the story of a prince who did both. A prince whose heart was crafted from the soft amber light of an eternal autumn, and how that very light was stolen to warm a frozen human kingdom. You might think you know how tales of ancient magic and mortal maidens end, with a rescue, a curse broken, or a tragic sacrifice. But this is not a story of mercy. It is a chronicle of how absolute devotion can be forged into the perfect cage, and by the time you reach the end, you will wish you had never stepped into the woods to find him. Long before the iron chains clanked beneath the stones of Alaric's keep, Prince Kaelen ruled the Whispering Woods with a quiet, devastating grace. For 3 centuries, he had watched humanity with the cold, detached amusement of an immortal. He knew the sharp edge of their greed, the brief flicker of their lives. Yet on the night of the equinox the world shifted. He found her by the borderlands, where the mortal realm bled into the mist of the Unseelie court. Her name was Elara, a simple weaver whose fingers moved like poetry over her loom. But she was different. When Kaelen stepped from the shadows, bathed in the terrifying ethereal glamour that usually drove mortals to their knees in blind, weeping worship, Elara merely paused. She did not tremble. She looked through the illusion, straight into his ancient, lonely eyes and smiled. In that single quiet breath, the Prince of Thorns was utterly undone. What followed was a courtship written in secret starlight. Kaelen, who had commanded armies and brought kings to ruin, became a gentle thief of hours just to be near her. He brought her treasures the human world had never dreamed of, cloaks woven from the literal threads of twilight, shoes crafted from unbreakable glass lilies that never chimed unless she was happy, and thimbles carved from fallen stars to protect her delicate fingers. They hid in a sun-dappled glen where time forgot to move, a sanctuary where Kaelen could shed his royal armor and kneel in the grass, entirely defenseless, as Elara braided wild roses into his copper hair. He loved her with a pure, blinding intensity that made him forget the first rule of the fair folk: never trust a mortal's tears. For while Elara's heart belonged to the prince, her life belonged to Lord Alaric, a man who had spent 40 years looking at the horizon, waiting for a weapon beautiful enough to trap a god. Thanks for watching this very emotional stories of Fae in this channel. Do subscribe and share to help growing the channel to enable us bring more to you. The transition from secret paradise to a gilded trap happened with the slow, agonizing grace of autumn giving way to winter. In the human realm, Lord Alaric's kingdom was dying, its soil choked by a magical blight that turned crops to ash. Elara wept for her people, but mostly she wept for Alaric, the foster father who coughed blood into lace handkerchiefs and whispered that his only wish was to see her safe before he perished. Desperate to save him, Elara turned to her prince. Kaelen, entirely blinded by his devotion, agreed to help. He told her his true name, the ultimate vulnerability for a Fae, whispering it against her lips as a pledge of absolute trust so she could weave a blessing of life into the very earth of her home. He did not know that Elara, in her innocent desperation, carried that sacred name straight to Alaric. The night Kaelen came to spirit Elara away to the eternal realm forever, the air was heavy with the scent of ozone and betrayal. He stepped into Alaric's grand hall, expecting a quiet escape. Instead, the heavy oak doors slammed shut behind him. The floorboards, concealed beneath plush rugs, were carved with intricate runes of cold iron. The moment Kaelen's boots crossed the threshold, the metal shrieked against his magic, suffocating his power and dropping him to his knees in agonizing paralysis. From the shadows stepped Lord Alaric, standing tall, robust, and entirely free of sickness. Elara stood beside him, her face pale, her eyes wide with a horror that came far too late. "Thank you, my dear child," Alaric sneered, his voice devoid of the frailty he had feigned for years. "You played your part beautifully." As Kaelen gasped for air, his lungs burning from the iron, Alaric spoke the prince's true name. The ancient, primordial magic of the Fae forced Kaelen's body to freeze, stripping away his ability to fight or flee. He was utterly enslaved by the words his lover had given away. They did not grant him the mercy of death. Instead, Alaric enacted a dark, binding ritual, driving cold iron spikes through Kaelen's shadow and anchoring his immortal soul to the deep foundations of the castle. Decades have passed since that terrible night. Above ground, Alaric's lands are a golden paradise, wealthy and prosperous, fueled entirely by the stolen life force of the captive prince. The mortals sing praises to their great king, oblivious to the horror beneath their feet. In a glass chamber deep in the dungeons, Kaelen remains. His copper hair has bleached white from centuries of unceasing agony. His amber eyes dim and hollow as his magic is violently siphoned day after day. Above him, Elara lives a prisoner in a gilded tower, forced to look through a glass viewing floor at the ruin she caused, weeping in the fine clothes he once wove for her. Trapped in his endless immortality, the Prince of Thorns looks up through the glass, forever chained by the beautiful lie of a mortal's love. Thanks for watching this very emotional stories of Fae in this channel. Do subscribe and share to help growing the channel to enable us bring more to you. The seasons bled into one another, uncounted by the immortal trapped in the dark. Decades became centuries, and the world above forgot that the golden warmth of their endless summer was paid for in screams. Lord Alaric grew old, fat on stolen divinity, and eventually rotted into the earth, but his lineage inherited the key to the glass cage. The crown changed heads, but the torture remained unchanged. Kaelen's body, preserved by his own agonizing immortality, never aged, though his spirit withered into something unrecognizable. His mind, once filled with the music of the stars and the smell of autumn leaves, became a barren wasteland of echoing iron and the phantom scent of wild roses. In the high tower, Elara's punishment was the cruelest of all. She did not die quickly. The residual magic of Kaelen's proximity stretched her human life far past its natural expiration, forcing her to endure the slow, painful decay of time. Her hands, once nimble on the loom, grew gnarled and frail. Her vision dimmed until she could barely see the threads she tried to spin. Yet, the glass floor beneath her feet remained perfectly clear. Every day, she was forced to look down into the glowing cavern where the man who had loved her lay pinned like a beautiful butterfly to a board, his white hair floating around him like a halo of frost. She cried out his name, his true name, begging for forgiveness, but the iron runes muffled her voice, converting her pleas into nothing more than soft vibrations that hummed through his chains. Down below, Kaelen did not look up. He had stopped looking up after the first 100 years. When Elara finally drew her last, rattling breath, dying alone in her silk-lined prison, Kaelen felt the subtle snapping of the bond that had once anchored him to her soul. He opened his gray, hollow eyes and looked at the ceiling one last time. There was no grief in his chest, no lingering spark of the prince he used to be. There was only the cold, crushing realization that love was the most vicious glamour of all, and he would spend eternity paying for the crime of believing it. The silence that followed her death was heavier than the centuries of iron. For the first time in an age, the siphoning slowed, the greedy veins of the castle pulsing sluggishly as if mourning the loss of the catalyst that had bound them. In the quiet, damp dark of his glass tomb, Kaelen lay perfectly still. His bone-white hair, once the vibrant color of a crisp autumn afternoon, spread across the stone like frost. He stared upward through the transparent ceiling, his hollow, desaturated gray eyes reflecting nothing but the cold, empty expanse of his prison. Upstairs, the gilded tower sat silent, its silk drapes fluttering in a breeze that no longer carried her weeping. Her body was gone, taken by the passage of time, but the legacy of her betrayal remained carved into the very stone of the kingdom. Kaelen felt no satisfaction in her end, nor did he feel grief. The snapping of the bond had not broken his chains. It had merely extinguished the last flickering ember of the prince he used to be. He was no longer a creature of the seasons, no longer a lord of the wild courts. He was a monument to mortal greed, a battery keeping a stolen empire alive. The kingdom above would continue to flourish. Alaric's descendants would continue to walk through fields of golden wheat, oblivious to the source of their prosperity. They would marry, rule, and die under a perfect sun, while far beneath their dancing feet, an immortal heart beat out its endless rhythm of agony. As the magical glow of his siphoned power dimmed to a dull, stagnant hum, Kaelen closed his eyes. The memories of starlight, of glass lilies, and the soft touch of fingers braiding roses into his hair did not comfort him. They were the ghosts that guarded his cage. He had given a mortal his true name, and in return, she had given him eternity in the dark. There would be no rescue, no sudden awakening of ancient power, and no redemption. There was only the endless, icy quiet, and the terrifying certainty that he would remain there, beautiful and broken, until the world itself crumbled into dust.